So lads, today the referees gave the report on the situation, and it's even worse. It's even worse than I imagined, and it was pretty grim.
The WNBA. Referees recently made public their official an analysis of the Connecticut Sun catastrophe, and it's somehow worse. More than we believed their justifications for. Aiming for Caitlin Clark while defending. Her assailants are so absurd that fans are going crazy. This report demonstrates all that we suspected of corruptly serving as an official in the league.
Why was JC Sheldon's foul upgraded to flagrant one? In the judgment of the officials, the foul by Sheldon was unnecessary. The contact to Clark's face. Furthermore, there was a wind-up and impact. The contact to face carries potential for injury. How did you come to the conclusion that that is a flagrant one? How did you come up to the conclusion that it was unnecessary? There was a wind-up and it was to the face. The three of them that is a flagrant 2. By definition, you've described a flagrant 2.
When I was 47, 2 minutes to 21 after witnessing do you believe the ref's pitiful explanations? The WNBA is making a conscious effort to interfere with Caitlin Clark's official report from the Connecticut Sun about referees. The game against the Indiana Fever just ended, as well as to inform you that it's the most damning evidence we've ever witnessed concerning corrupt WNBA officiating. These refs didn't only fail at their job, they exposed themselves as completely prejudiced against Caitlin Clark, but protecting the players at the same time, who abused her. Let me break down this complete farce of a report because each and every, with just one explanation, the officiating appear worse than it did before. The referees basically acknowledged fans have been yelling about everything, while in some way believing their justifications seem to make logic. Witnessing someone confess to a crime, despite saying they're innocent first. Let's discuss their justification for the reason behind JCS Sheldon's eye-gouging assault on. Only a flagrant 1 was used to describe Clark, rather than the evident flagrant 2 and expulsion the referee should have said Sheldon's foul was unnecessary with ultimately cause a blow to Clark's face that has the potential to cause harm. Slowly read that again, because they simply explained the second of a textbook flagrant while describing the reasons they deemed it a blatant 1.
Unnecessary contact. Wind up and unnecessary. The two of those can be a flagrant 2. And face. You have described why was it a flagrant 2. You have just described a flagrant 2 as your answer for why it was upgraded.
The prerequisites for a flagrant 2 contains needless contact, wind up, and possibility of the referees getting hurt. Listed each of the 3 components in their justification for not creating a. The second flagrant is similar to saying someone killed someone while stating the reason. You accuse them solely of jaywalking. Total illogic in their reasoning demonstrates how preset their decision was. What aggravates me even more about this is that Sheldon's assault was unrelated. With basketball, Clark was using her left hand to dribble. Sheldon scratched her right eye, and the ball was far from the point of collision. Happened. This wasn't a coincidence. Collision while playing basketball was an intentional attempt to harm the league's biggest celebrity, but inexplicably the referees have now managed to reduce it. Let's look at their pitiful justification. Why wasn't Marina Mabrey expelled? Following a dash across the court to the corpse, Clark should be checked to the ground during a dead. The referee stated that the level of contact did not increase to an expulsion and failed to fulfill the requirements for egregious punishment, which appears to be assault. Doesn't count as long when a ball is dead, since it goes against Caitlin Clark's. The Mabrey incident was very clear. Outrageous that even casual admirers were requesting immediate ejection. She had nothing to do with basketball. Close to Clark, not to mention body checking her to the ground. It was outright revenge, intended to frighten and possibly hurt. Yet these dishonest people claim referees, that's just traditional. basketball. This is where the report becomes completely absurd that they somehow managed to assign a technical foul to Caitlin Clark for exhibiting an unsportsmanlike reaction following eye and body abrasions. Let me acquire this after checking the ground, being attacked directly, and then attempting to hold your wounded eye while escape your assailants is. What specifically is unsportsmanlike behavior? What should she have done in that circumstance? In essence, the referees punished Clark for having been assaulted. She received banged in the belly and scratched in the eye by Sheldon, followed by Mabry's surprise. Holding her injured eye while committing her crime seems to be ignoring this harassment quietly enough for the referee to approve of. Victim blaming at its most extreme. Tina Charles's ridiculously extreme. The explanation for the technical foul was similarly strange in the opinion of the referees. Charles rushed towards Caitlin's direction in an disrespectful way, so pointing at someone and moving towards them now constitutes unsportsmanlike behavior, clawing but deserving of a technical foul. Someone checking them out with their eyes and body. It's just standard basketball to the ground. Contact. The double standard is so clearly, it is offensive to Sophie. The rationale for Cunningham flagrant 2 was, it was the only one that made sense. Unfortunately showed how incorrect all the other calls in which they stated her contact was superfluous and exaggerated, which it. Sophie definitely grabbed Sheldon around the throat as payback for what had been performed on Clark. The distinction is that Sophie's behavior was truly referred to as suitably, even though the original attacks were reduced, which is quite devastating over this entire sequence, which the referees acknowledged. They claimed to have lost control of the game. The reason the situation worsened was because they neglected to address the previous occurrences appropriately, but rather than taking accountability for their shortcomings, they discovered ways to place the blame on everyone but the players who were the ones that initiated the issues with Lindsay Allen's dismissal for. She was caught making a joke about fighting in the altercation after Sophie left, following Sheldon, but her participation was little in comparison to what others had accomplished. Somehow, during the game, she got expelled as Mabry, the perpetrator of the most heinous attack, was still in the game. The selective enforcement was Coach Stephanie's ridiculously clear. White's response to this circumstance in the news conference held after the game was flawless when reporters attempted to elicit Clark's thoughts on the White, the officiating official, took over and she shielded herself from the interrogation. Top player without needing to traverse the criticizing referees is a political minefield, while emphasizing that it was unacceptable to officiate. White's remarks concerning the referees were terrible since they were sent with tactful professionalism while being utterly damning. She stated the officials were aware since the first quarter that things were becoming unmanageable, but they were unable to keep the situation under control. They were basically accused of being incompetent while preserving deniability. The harshest aspect of White's remarks occurred when she discussed how everyone in the league is improving, with the exception of. She complimented the players and the officials for having more strength, speed, and more athletic than previously, then casually said the referees haven't kept up. As the game progressed, it was diplomatic destruction. White's strategy was brilliant because she increased the league's players while blaming the referees for the issue. She refrained from criticizing the WNBA as an organization or disparage other groups. She clarified that the only problem was competent in officiating, which makes it is more difficult for the league to fire her. Issues as prejudice grievances, the reality that each and every league coach has been. This is demonstrated by complaints concerning officiating. Is not solely an issue with Indiana Fever when everyone is in agreement that the referees are failing, making it impossible to reject as a team or sour grapes. Particular bias. The issue is pervasive and clear to all parties concerned. What makes this circumstance even more the aggravating thing is that it was totally avoidable if the referees had just. Sheldon was ejected following her eye gouging attack, none of the drama that follows. What Sophie Cunningham might have experienced would not have felt compelled to take revenge, and the game might have gone on without incident rather than their failure to suitably penalize the original onslaught produced an environment where players believed they had to enforce themselves. Sophie basically carried out the ref's work for them by elucidating that assaulting Clark would have repercussions. She took one for the group. When the authorities wouldn't provide protection, the trend of their star player, watching Clark's games all the way through her second season has continuously troublesome. She is frequently struck by interaction that could lead to a flagrant other players' fouls, while her responses to being attacked in some way warrant the double technical fouls, so well established that it's turn become a predictable global consequences of this officiating. Moreover, disaster cannot be disregarded. Globally, basketball fans are observing the WNBA's treatment of its biggest. What they're witnessing is a star. It's awkward when your authorities are blatantly prejudiced against your most marketable player. It harms the league's reputation around the world. The social response of the media to this referee report has been largely unfavorable for the WNBA. The explanations are being openly ridiculed by fans and pointing out the blatant prejudice when your officiating turns into a joke. It influences how legitimate people think competition outcomes. What's especially galling over this entire circumstance is how Clark's ability to portray her is impacted. Natural game, even though she is aware that she won't receive equitable treatment from officials, she must change her strategy to prevent circumstances in which she could be harmed. That lowers the standard of basketball for observing the precedents. Everyone settings for next games is concerning if players are aware that they can go after Clark without suffering grave repercussions, while anyone who defends her gets ejected. It creates a dangerous dynamic. In essence, the referees have painted a focus on Clark's back while removing her protection. The business consequences of this officiating bias are astonishing. Clark is the biggest draw in women's basketball, bringing in millions of viewers and selling out arenas. When refs create situations that could potentially injure her or affect her performance, they're risking the league's most valuable asset. The fact that this happened in a nationally televised game makes it extra worse. Casual fans tuning in to watch Clark got to see her get molested while the refs penalized her for being a victim, which isn't precisely the type of product that creates enduring audience devotion to the referee. This game staff should deal with significant repercussions for how they handled this circumstances. Their official report basically acknowledges a number of shortcomings while attempting to defend blatantly biased choices made. When officials reveal oneself this terribly, there ought to be responsibility. This catastrophe's timing couldn't be. In the case of the WNBA, the league is, while attempting to negotiate new media rights deals and establish itself as a legitimate professional sports organization. When potential partners observe this form of officiating malfunction, it poses important queries regarding the league's proficiency in examining similar circumstances in other professional sports. Are difficult to locate. Even something this obviously biased. Leagues with issues with officiating don't usually witness their referees publicly acknowledge failing and pointing the finger at the victims of their shortcomings. At this degree of the level of incompetence is nearly unprecedented. The reality that Clark must cope with this trash in her second season is she should be especially annoying, concentrated on creating her game and assisting her squad in their competition for championships. Instead, she's dealing with referees. Is the difference in how this circumstance was managed in contrast to comparable events involving other. When less well-known, players are glaring. Players fight with the referees, typically resolve issues swiftly and fairly, but whenever Clark is involved, it appears like things are getting worse and worse. Inadequately managed. The international basketball community is taking note of this problem too. When international leagues and players see how the WNBA treats its biggest star, it affects their opinion of American women's basketball as a whole. Such bias doesn't stay contained within one organization. What's most maddening about this referee report is how it confirms everything people have been commenting about: prejudiced, basically officiating. The referees acknowledged using a different approach with Clark, while in some way believing their actions were justified by explanations. It's similar to admitting guilt while maintaining your innocence over time. What harm does this cause to the WNBA? Credibility is incalculable when your own representatives reveal oneself as prejudiced due to their official justifications, which undercut the validity of each match they referee. Fans begin to wonder if competition outcomes are valid or fix the fact that we're even. Having this discussion demonstrates how far the WNBA has yet to make progress in terms of professional standards for officiating. Sports leagues that are successful lack referees who freely acknowledge their partiality, while, in an attempt to defend it, they maintain at the very least the semblance of justice. And this referee report's competency will most likely be regarded as one of the most detrimental records in the history of the WNBA. It offers documented evidence of what fans have been overseeing, while in some way creating the circumstances worse through ludicrously awful justifications. Immediately following this report,